Okay. Cool. So this is where we were at. We've learned about routing. How does that help us? Well, we'll see in a moment. Because now, if we are to go inside test YouTube Blogger, this is one of the paths that we can go from home, right? We might make use of different components like this one, which is not yet fully exported, doesn't do anything, and then see our entire application working. Now, this one, as I've mentioned, doesn't do anything so far. So let's do return and give it something. Let's build it here. Okay, and now I'm exporting from this file YouTube Blogger link. I'm gonna copy this line, go into index, the one at the same level as the file that I copied it from, and just paste that. At the end of it, I'm gonna type from, then single quote dot slash, and I'm gonna choose YouTube Blogger. That's the file that I'm importing from. Okay, so this file YouTube Blogger here, it's this one here. Okay, I'm getting better at drawing. So, boom, that's it. Now, since I have that line over there, which is one line, right? I'm gonna copy it, go to the bigger index and paste it there. Now I can make use of YouTube Blogger and YouTube Blogger link by just importing them from component because I have them in this index. With that said, let's go to test YouTube Blogger, which sits inside routes, and make use of our component. YouTube Blogger. And you should have autocomplete and auto import for it, as long as everything went fine. If not, just type in that import. Now I'll go back here and go back to home and then click my YouTube Blogger, and I can see let's build it here, as well as some other stuff that's on top of it, which I don't need right now. So I'm gonna remove this one and only leave back home. So I got back home and let's build it here. Are we in a similar place? Do you need help with anything?
I haven't done my YouTube Blogger
That's
folder
okay.
yet.
I don't think I have a folder, or do I? I don't have.
Yeah,
No, I don't.
components.
No, I don't have. I just have a file. Test YouTube Blogger. That's the name of my file.
Yeah, but you have YouTube Blogger, I mean, in the components
In the
folder.
component. That's a separate one.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't have that one.
That's okay. It's just a component as a button. So far. Now, what do you want this YouTube Blogger to display? As far as they've talked, firstly, we want to display a list and then probably click on one of the items from the list and navigate further, right?
Yep.
Now, when we talk about this, we also talk about collections, right? Because when we say list, it's more of them. Right? It has to be a collection somehow involved. And when we talk about collections in JavaScript, we need to think about the data that sits inside the collection to understand it better. So now I'm going to give you a few examples, and you can help me out with those examples. Marian, then 40, and then 12. Okay. And then I got London. I got Bucharest. And I don't know, and any other one, Paris. Right? Now, when we look at those two bits of information. I can even add more here. Let's see, New York. It doesn't matter that they're free or not. And I can even add more stuff here. Coder, right? So they kind of all look almost the same, even if I remove this one or at least do it like this. They kind of look the same, right? They define something. They have a meaning behind it. However, if you look at the data, something is different. The data itself, the properties. So what can you tell me about what do you see as being similar or different about those two only?
All of them are strings.
All of them are string, yes. So that's something they have in common. But if you look at the data itself and you read it, what does it tell you as a human?
Well, there is number, there is text.
Well, if I look at it, I can see that Marian and 40 and Toll and Coder, all of them together make sense, but the Marian and 40 has nothing in common. 40 and Toll has nothing in common, so they're kind of different. Now, those ones are different as well. However, I know that London, Bucharest, and Paris and New York are cities.
All locations, yeah.
Or are kind of either locations or cities or capitals or metropolis or whatever they are. This is what they have in common. So they are kind of part of a group, I would say. Just they differ from place to place, but all of them are cities, right? So I would say that those have unique meanings, and those would have similar meanings, right? They share something together, share common traits, abilities, namings, something common. They share something common together, right? Now, if I'm to think of collections in JavaScript, I can do it in so many ways. Some people might want to do an object. Some people might want to do an array. Let's try both and understand the difference. That will help us further explore what we need to do. Now, if I'm to store this inside an object, I might do name Marian, right? Comma. Age 40, comma. Yeah, I can even add it as a string, doesn't really matter. And then let's say height, tall, and then job, coder. I might represent it like this, right? If I'm to represent it inside an array, I might do like this. Right?
Okay. Then we can say if they have similar meanings, we are putting in a array. If not, then in a...
No, we can do both. I'm just saying this is how I would do code if I would write it in an array or in an object. Now, which one is better? Well, both of them are good. Now, the intention behind what we want to do, if it is going to help us decide what we want to do, it's not like arrays are worse than objects or the other way around. Now, if we are to do this one over here, and we'll start now to see some similarities and some differences once we start to represent them. How would I do it if it would be, let's say, an object? If it would be an object, I might say city, right? And London. And then I might say city, come on. And then Bucharest. What do you know happens in objects if you do this? Because I can even see this one, it suddenly became like less brighter. It's like a darker blue. So in objects, just like in CSS, if you have multiple properties with the same name, the last one wins.
Yeah.
So those ones are kind of, you can think of them not existing. So in order to get around this one, we have to name them unique. So I might do city1, right? And now suddenly I no longer have that problem. Well, actually 3 here, and comma, Paris, and then New York, right? Now, if I'm to place those ones in an array, I might do like this and add commas. So basically, wrap them either with curly braces. When you wrap them with curly braces, you must add a key before each value. Now, the keys must be unique for coding purposes. JavaScript doesn't care if you have more of them. It's just going to take the last one. So you can have multiple keys. Some of them might repeat with the same name. Just know that the last one wins. So you might tap into that logic or not. This is how it works. Now, if you have them as an array, you do not need to pass any keys, and there'll be some differences now. Now, if we are to read this one, it comes easy for us to understand. Well, name is Marian, age is 40, height is tall, and job is coder. Every time we read this, it's going to be easy. Now, what happens if I add a dot here and we use our imagination, and suddenly we have this? We have an object with lots of cities, 1,233 cities, and we look at a list like this, scrolling down and up and so on. Now, every time we are going to read it, we're going to get the info back just as normal. It's just that it's going to be hard for us to reason, okay, city 2, but which is city 43? Was it the other one? You can't, it's not easy for you to keep track of it, right? Because the meaning behind it now gets lost. All of them are cities. Now here, not all of them are names, not all of them are age, not all of them are height, and not all of them are job. Therefore, it's easy to reason about them like this in this relation, right? Over here, it gets a bit lost. Now, because I start thinking of when I build websites and solutions, because I start thinking about the product first, I don't end up with the solution to start with. I end up with the solution once I start working on it. So to me, it makes more sense to use objects once I have properties that their meanings are more or less unique. They don't share that common thing, that repeatable idea among them. And therefore, I might choose an object to start with whenever I want to represent that data. Now, if the things that are inside look like they kind of repeat almost, just with different values, then I might choose an array. Now, in coding, there are different reasons why you might choose one or the other. However, for us, it only matters that as long as we can represent that data, we're going to learn how to bring it back to the browser. So now I'll start talking about the events that we have. Let's call this event, maybe I actually give it a name, JavaScript functions from 0. And we might have another event called JavaScript, because I'm not creative now. It can happen. Functions, come on, functions from 0, part 1, part 2, right? And then I might make this one part 1. Then I might go and add another one which says how to start a project with Remix and React. Okay, so if we are to look at those ones, and it might be easier to look like this at those ones, should we make an object out of this or an array? What do you think? You have to read the data in order to answer, to look into the meanings of it. Do they share something together or not? Okay.
Wait, can you say that again, please?
So when you read this data and you try to translate it in your head, what does that mean? Is food is going to the mountain? What is it about, right? When you look at what the data is about, is it about something that is similar one to another, or is it totally different?
But first two are similar because it's part one and part two. Second one, it's a different thing, but it's similar. It's in the same ballpark.
Yeah, the way I see them, they look like some titles of probably some, in our case, of their videos. Could be articles, could be courses, could be something, but it looks like all the time we are talking about some kind of way of using some technologies. So to me, they're like the cities,
Yeah.
they share that common thing. So therefore, I will make an array out of it by just selecting it, adding round square brackets around it, and either at the end of each element or just in between all of them. The last one is optional. We can add a comma, and that's it. We got an array. Now, we don't want to copy paste this array like this every time we make use of it here and probably here. We don't want to copy paste that array every time. Therefore, we need the value of it. We can make use of that value if we assign it to a constant. To assign anything in JavaScript, use the equal sign. The double equals and triple equals are comparison, so only the single equal assigns. And if you want to compare and use a single equal, it's not going to compare, it's going to assign. So use double and triple for comparison and single for assignments, right? So const, let's give it a name of OSANS. Event
Video.
list, video event list. So we include that word as well, video event list. And now let me see what's wrong about this. What's wrong about this is this bit over here. I copy pasted in multiple places just to tell you that if I want to make use of it, I need it there, right? But now, instead of copy pasting it, I can just call this constant, not YouTube logger. Something is wrong here. This constant video event list. I can just call it wherever I want it, and I have access to that data. That's why we use constants. So we can access data in different places and declare it in one. Okay?
Yeah.
Cool. We don't need it in all of those places, but we'll need it somewhere. Now, if you're following me, that's okay. If not, I have something that's wrong over here. You shouldn't have it in yours, but if you do, is that whenever you're using JavaScript, that's ECMAScript 6 and so on, and you're using imports, there can be nothing unless there are comments on top of imports. So I have a constant. Either I move the constant down or the imports up, and then I get that error go away. Yay. So if you did the same mistakes as I did, now I know how to fix it. Okay. Yay. So now I got this video event list, which is a list, right, of strings so far. And I'm going to go between this curly brace and the return. This is where I write logic for a component. Okay, and if you have any, if you don't have any, then you don't need logic. And my logic right now is to say, show me the list inside the console of the browser, and then a comma, and then the name. So I've called this console log with round parentheses. Inside it, I've added two arguments, 1, 2. The first one is a string. The second one is this constant that we created here, video event list. So we should see inside the browser that console being fired. And we can see it here. Just a second, let me close all these things. Boom. And now everything is clear. So, do you see that console working? With that array inside it, which we can use the triangle to collapse and expand it. Now, this is something I do as a web developer, because if I do this and I don't see what's expected, I shouldn't continue. I should look into why it's not working, because otherwise I'm working on something that's not working in the first place. So if I'm expecting to see this right here and I don't see it, then I might have some typos, I might have some different things that don't work. So far, this confirms to me that on line 22, I could do something about this video event list, because if I wouldn't see it here, it wouldn't exist. Since I can see it in the console, it can only mean that video event list, it's actually this array. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we know that we can access video event list here. If we are to go a bit more further down, like here, and let's add some curly braces, which allow us to write JavaScript inside them. And the JavaScript part that we want to write is this video event list. We start with it. Video event list. And let's look again at it. It's an array of strings. And usually those are the children, right? And if we were to pass some variables over here, sometimes React doesn't complain about it, and sometimes it does. In this case, because the values are strings, React is not going to complain about it. So if I'm saving it, and if I go back to the browser, I should see all of them in here as a long list or whatever, long word, one after the other. See?
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is okay if that's what we want. We don't need to do anything else. However, if we want something different, we might do something different. Now, the idea is I'm just going to convert one of them to an object with a title of this. That's it. I'm going to save it, and boom. So whenever you see this kind of error, objects are not valid as a React child, don't panic. Just figure out what we are trying to print and look into which one is an object, because most of them wouldn't be objects and they don't error out. But if there is an object, React is going to complain about it. So maybe you want to print, let's say, the title of that property, which is a string. React is not going to complain about if you say property.title, but if you just say property and the property is an object, then React is going to complain. Keep that in mind. Yay, so we got video event list, and we can see the contents of it. However, there is another way to see the contents of it, and we can control more about how it gets printed. So far, if you want to leave it like this, with 3 strings one after the other, then React is going to convert that list into for us, and it's going to print it in the browser. Now, we've learned that arrays have functions on them, quite a lot of them. Concat, copy, within, entries, fill, not too many. You should look into PHP. There's pages of functions, probably 10 to 20 times more, if not even more than in JavaScript, probably more. So those are not quite a lot, and let me tell you, you're not going to use all of them ever. However, some of them, there are a few of them, like two to five of them that are mostly used in 99% of everything we use in JavaScript. Some of them will be used less times, but for example, for each is quite used. Sometimes includes not as used, sometimes join. So includes and join are sometimes used. However, for each, then there is map, and then reduce and filter. There's filter somewhere. Filter. So map, filter for each, and reduce, let's say, are the 4 most used ones. Now, each and every one does similar things, which is they iterate through the same collection. Now, the output of each and every one is different, but all of them will pass through each and every element until it meets its target, whatever it's meant to do, and then it gives you an output. Now, map is interesting. Map is something that I use the most. And map is a function that is a monad that is more stuff. However, map is a function, therefore we call it with round parentheses. Well, map is a property, the value of it is a function, that's why we call it. Okay, so inside it, we can pass, just like in a function, multiple arguments, A, B, C, M, N, hey, whatever. We can pass multiple arguments. Right? Now, map accepts as the first argument a function. So therefore, we don't start like that. That's not a function, because the argument itself, it's a function. We write like this, a function. So those don't add up. Those are the calling of map. This is the start of the arguments, the fat arrow, and the body of a function. So they're separate, right? Okay, so now this function will get called for all the elements inside this. So this function will get called for this element, this function will get called for this element, and for this element. Now, it happens that right now they are strings, but they could be anything. They could be numbers, they could be functions, other functions, they could be objects, arrays, and so on. The way you look at it is whatever follows after this, let's say square bracket, exactly after it, that's when you start looking at the type of the value, not somewhere inside it. Okay, that's how you do it. Okay, so because those ones happen to be strings, okay, in a second, then the first argument is the value, and those are strings. Value would be a string 3 times. It will be a string for this one with this value, it will be a string for this one with this value, and it will be a string one for this value. So this is how it works. Now if we would have objects, then value would be an object as well, not some string or some value inside the object. So think of it as what's selected, if I am to select it, between where it starts something and the comma. That's the entire thing. Then you look for the second comma, what's in here. Oh, it looks like a string. Then you look for the other comma, and so on. Cool. Now value is going to be a string. Let's just output it quite quickly. For this purpose, either I am to write a return word here, and because I don't want to have too much logic, I can remove the, let's say, curly braces, and I'm going to add either round parentheses or directly the tag itself, if I want to write it like this in one line. And inside it, I can do span, I can do div, anything. I can do even main if I want to. I can do any tag, just main, see, any tag. And then inside the curly braces, let's print value. See what happens. So inside my browser, now I can see a tag main being repeated 3 times, and inside it, the value has been converted to the string that is present in this array for each of the values of the array. Yay. Now you might notice that this one has some kind of white curly underline, well, yellow curly underline, which indicates us that there is something not wrong about it, but there is a warning. It's not an error. Errors usually are red. Yellow is more like a warning. It also says missing key prop. So that tells us that this main element, this, if it will be a div, it doesn't matter. This element that happens to be exactly the first one since we started the body of the function. We're no longer using curly braces, but this is the return that, let's say, the body of our function will give us back. Now, we could have inside it, and I'm going to wrap this one in another random element, paragraph. I'm going to do some more ones. You don't need to do them, by the way, just for the showing purposes. So you notice that now we are returning a richer structure with more stuff in it. Now the idea is the first element needs to be only one, by the way. So this is not going to help us if we have 2 elements inside this return as the return starts. So we need to have only one root element in this return. And those elements, I'm not talking about them, I'm just talking always about this one. Now, for this one, we need to add a key. And this key needs to be something unique. Unique. Yeah. Most of the times, you'll see people doing this key. And then we just add this key here. Depending on your intention, this could be a good approach or not. Now we'll talk about this key and those approaches later on. So far, I know that I need something unique over here. Key comes from this function as an argument, and it will be for each iteration 0, 1, 2, 3 for as many elements as you need. So this will be key 0, key 1, key 2 until it finishes the entire array. That's good. It gives us unique. However, we can look at the data and we can see that those are unique as well. So for me, it's a decision between passing key or value, because they're unique. If they wouldn't be unique, then this key and however it works is going to be affected, and we need to think of some other way of make this value unique that we're passing down. Now, as soon as I let's say pass that key, you should see that it no longer complains, and now we can see our lists in here being repeated. Now keep in mind that sometimes you might need to, let's say, add more structure to this. At some point you might need another div here, maybe an h1 with some content, maybe another paragraph with some more content. And now because there is too much content, somehow your logic changes, and now you need to wrap this main in another div or a section, right? I'm gonna choose section just to play with it. Now what happens? What do you see wrong? Those curly braces, right, are back.
Yeah.
So the reason is when you do this is because now key is no longer present in the first element, because now the first element is section. So all you need to do is move it up. Whenever you're using maps and you're doing this kind of scenario, that's what you need to do. Yay, this one doesn't know section.
I think it's reserved or something.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, just use a div.
Yeah.
Some-
I'm not gonna fight with it.
Yeah.
Anyway, now do we know how to use keys at a basic level, and why do you use those keys? Because they need to be unique. There's also a reason, well, the real reason why do you use keys. It's to optimize React whenever it's manipulating data and rendering on the front end. We're gonna get to that one. That one takes a lot of time to explain it in its own. So let's just focus on the fact that every time we do a map, we need to add a key, and this key should have a value. This time it's named value, maybe write something else. Okay. So
usually the value is what we're passing in from an array or object or whatever.
So is it working now for you? In terms of using this one? Agnes?
Oh. Which?
Did you mention that you have an object here, or?
No, I'm just saying, just repeating myself, the value is always what we are passing down from an object
Exactly.
on an array.
Yeah. So with that said, we got a list. It's printed here, but it's not our list. So how can we start either adding to this list or somehow maybe deleting from it? That's a good question, right? How can we manage this list?
With another
Cool.
function.
Let's learn about useState and later on about useEffect. However, if we are to write here const a equals 2, we could make use of a here and we would see 2. However, if we are to make some logic, that will tell a to change its value from 2 to 3, and that's not the point of using const anyway. So let's say it's let, and it allows us to change that value. That would not be reflected in here directly, because let's say this component has already rendered. It has already rendered with the value of 2. Now, if you make some JavaScript logic that changes this value to, let's say, 5, you're not going to see 5 here unless you're going to go and select this h1 and change its content to reflect that data. So you're going to need to somehow create some hacks in order to make this work. It's possible, not necessarily something you want to do. Now, each component in React has some life cycle hooks built in that you can make use of. And we'll meet some of them quite soon. One of them is use effect. So use effect is going to be imported from React in the future. If you, well, not use effect, come on, use state. We're gonna use effect in a second, but use state is the one that I want first. Use state is the same thing anyway. So you still import it from React, use state. And this is a function. And it also returns an array. Always with two properties inside it. Okay, this is how it works. And in the first property, like index 0, first prop is the one that we make use of, okay, and the second one is a function. It's a function, and this function, when called with a value, is going to change the value of the first property. Will change first. So use state. Okay, use state is a hook from React. At the same time, use state, the value of it is a function, so you'll be calling it with round parentheses when you want to make use of it. And because it's a function, it can receive arguments inside it. Now, use state, if you pass an argument to it, it's gonna give this value its initial value. So if you call use state with 2, then the first property will have value 2. If you call use state with an object, then first property will have the value of an object. If you call use state with anything you want to call it with, the first property is going to receive that value. It's like the default value that you want to set, right? Now you can also call use state with nothing, which will give the first value nothing. It's going to be undefined, right? And this is the initial part. So whenever you use state, now use state returns an array, and we've learned about arrays, square brackets, and if I say with always two values, you can think of an array with first value here, comma, second value here, and then that's the array. Okay? Now, the first prop is something we want to make use of, and we're going to make use a lot of those properties, and you're going to understand how they work. And the second function is more like a tool. Every single time we want to make use of it and call it, with something, it's going to change the value of this one. And now that we know that we call this function to change the value of this one, we will expect in the future, once we call this function, somehow this value to have access to it. Now, the use state and some other ones differ a bit from hooks to hooks. What use state does, and some other ones don't, is that when it detects a change in the value, if our value that we are making use was 2, and now we change it to 3, now use state detects that, well, the components detects that anyway, and then makes a refresh of the entire component. Now, in our earlier case that we discussed, where we could have changed that variable, but it wouldn't reflect in the UI. Now, because the component refreshes and it sees the new value, whenever it renders, it's going to render a new time. It's like a second time the component, this time with the new value. So you don't have to do anything about it. It refreshes the component for you and it reflects the change. So it's kind of why we might use state. If we want to make a change to a variable and also reflect that quickly in the front end, it could be one of the reasons we make use of use state. Now, we've talked about it a lot. Let's write it quickly and see if we have questions. So no use state is imported from React. I have it here. I don't need this thing. I'm not sure why it's here. So it's a function. I'm going to call it. All good so far?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the return value of it can be assigned to a property, const of property. Okay. What do you think the value of a property would be based on what we've discussed so far?
Now it's gonna be undefined.
Not necessarily, because what does useState return?
And it's gonna be an array.
An array. So this a property would be an array. Now later
Yeah,
on,
array.
if I say const use me equals a property, yeah, of index 0, that will be our value. And if we are to say change use me with index 1, this would be the function that changes use me. So this is what happens. useState returns an array. The value of index 0, whichever is like in the first part of the a property array, is gonna be assigned to use me, and so on. Now, if we are to pass a value here, hello, from useState, and make use of this this use me here. Let's see how our browser looks like. Let's build it here. Hello from useState. All good so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you can even see that they look together, but they're separate in terms of the axis. Them as this as a part and this as an empty thing and the other one. Now, if we are to call this change use me later on with any value, this should change in terms of how. Change use me is going to receive an argument. The argument is going to go just like this one as a value, and it's going to go to this a property in the array. A property will have as index 0 a new updated value that will capture it into use me. So use me somehow, when I say this, is going to go around like that and go here. Okay, let's see it working somehow. I'm going to touch a button underneath it. I cannot touch anything. A button is quite easy to do. So change use me. Now I should see a button change use me, which doesn't do anything. And to this button, I can attach a property, an attribute on click. And either I start writing the function in here and define it in here and write the logic here, which is totally fine. Or I can take the function that I want to write outside anywhere on top of that return and assign it to a constant. Const click me, that's the name of it, and just paste the function, which is a very basic function, right? So either I write that function in here, either I assign it to a constant outside, and then I just make use of that constant here. I prefer to do it outside because it's cleaner. And it also doesn't instantiate an anonymous function and whatever. We'll get into it later. Console log, I am clicked. Let me know when you have a similar code where you have a button tag with an attribute on click. Now you need curly braces because you need the value of the function is the value of click me, right? So you need this function. You don't need the string function, the string click me, you need the function, right? And then in here you can type anything you want. You should have now a button. And now if you go and open your console, maybe you want to clear it or not. However, when you click the button, you should see I am clicked. Are you with us, Vivi?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm looking,
Cool.
following.
Questions? Did you get it to a similar point? Maybe with a different here, something different.
Yeah, I'm following.
Okay. Yay. So, now there are other ways to write this one because we know the properties in array, and this is how we access values in array by index. We can write the same thing as const, then we write array equals, and the same thing as here. Use state and a first value. And now I'm gonna comment this entire thing at the top. And now I can use this structuring, and because this is the first value, and this is the second one, I know that this is the value that I want to make use of. Use me. And I know that this one is a function because it's the second one in the array, and I can name it change. Yay. So now those 3 lines are 1. All good?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now, this is just a saying const change me, and later on you could have called this change me. This is the same right now. So over here we can make use of change me, change use me actually, and pass the string of anything I can think of, and let's see what happens when I click our button. Yay. And I'll also remove this so it's easier for us to see. The first value is the first value that it starts with, right?
Mm.
Then use me has that value because we passed 1. If we wouldn't, it would be okay, just to be nothing. So you can have nothing if you want to have nothing. I want to have something, that's why I wrote it there. Cool. Now I don't think I need this console log anymore. I either comment it out and make use of it later, but I don't need it there. And now only click me has a console log and a line that says call me this function, and the first argument is a string, therefore this is going to go like here and then here into this one. Hey. Vivi, do you have it working?
I'm following. I know what you're doing. Hey,
Okay.
I'm haven't written on my end what you did, but I'm following you.
Okay. So now we could pass any value for this. I'm thinking, could we pass this value to it? Let's see. So I'm gonna pass video event list, which is an array of strings, no longer a string, to this use state.
Yes,
Hey.
obviously.
Now, this might complain, changes me for the click, because now we are trying to set the value of an array of being a string. Now, JavaScript doesn't care about this, and neither React. It's just TypeScript that complains. Because there's nothing wrong with this. It's wrong as from the point of view of our intention, but the code is valid. You're going to change and write to a string, that's it. So if you'd have a TypeScript that a type that allows for an array and a string, then this wouldn't show. It's just typing, okay? However, we want to keep it the same and take this into consideration what TypeScript tells us. And in terms of we want to pass it an array with a string inside it, because if we change an array with some elements into a different array, some elements, at the end it's still going to be an array, not a string or an object or something else. So now because every single time we play with arrays as our decision and intention, then we can rest assured that every time we make use of use me is going to be always an array, because our logic never tells it to be otherwise. So now use me is going to be always an array. Firstly, it should be this one. We can double check anyway. And then later on, it could be a different one like this one. So let's see now. If I am to go to the browser, I can see that those ones have been printed just as before, one after the other. And as soon as I click change me, it's going to show just one of them. Right?
So
Why is that? Because now the array will only have one element. So we can do that. We can replace an empty array with a bigger array, or a bigger array with an empty array, or a smaller array for a bigger one, and so on. We can just replace them and they reflect that change. Now let's see how we can control this a bit. We are generating something. Firstly, we are generating the text on the screen, and we've learned that they just stitch together. However, if you want to control them, we should get back to this video event list, because now we've learned how to control a button, how to click, how to capture its click event, and once you click on it, you can do something about it. We also made use of a logic that console logs just prints in the console, and at the same time of a function. This function comes from a use state, and this use state, when the function is called, is going to always update use me. At the same time, use state, once the component detects a change of values, so if the array is no longer the original one and a different one, it's going to also refresh this entire view. So this entire thing is going to be redrawn just as first time, with the exception that now it has access to the new values, right? Yeah. So that's what happens. Yay. Now, I think for the moment that I'm going to remove some of this from over here. And so far, we should get only those ones. Now, I still have key here. So after my naming, my custom naming, which is something else, I'm going to add some spaces, maybe some weird characters, and then an interpolation and just type key. Now, once I've done that, I should see my text, some weird characters that repeats every single time, and then 0, 1, and 2. And so far we confirmed that keys, as we've talked about it, for each iteration is going to increase from 0 until there are no longer any more elements. Yay. So now I want to either write one more button here or move this one here, whichever you want to prefer. So far I'm going to move this one down and save it. Now I can see that besides the paragraph and the main and this div being repeated 3 times, I also get inside the button that appears 3 times. And if I click on it, I actually see something different, and then again something different, and so on. Something different every time I click on it, because that's the console log. Now also my, let's say, my path or the things up, upstairs have updated, I would say. However, what I'm doing right now is I'm pressing on this button and I'm calling a function, and I need to know now somehow a way to know that this button is not just something different, but this button is something different and somehow knows about this key. There are multiple ways to do it. A quick way would be to, instead of calling this function, so think about it like this. That's a function, right? Click me, because we've defined it here. We can see that it's a function, right? We could replace it by another function and nothing would change as long as the content would be the same. Now what would happen is whatever we pass over here is going to get called. So if we pass this function, then this is going to get called and this is going to happen. Now if we pass this function, well, this is going to get called and whatever we write inside will happen as well. Now, because I don't want too many things to happen, I can just remove those ones, and what I'm about to write is quite short. It fits in one line, so I don't need those curly braces, and I also don't need the word return, so I can just do the short body. The short body is gonna call click me. Okay, it's similar to what we've wrote before. Let me have this at the top so you can see it. Before it used to be like that.
Yeah.
and I'll comment it out. And now we've added those in front of it. Now click me, we are gonna call it, and this time when you call it, because we are more or less similar like those ones, we are at the same level, not at the same as this one, but same level, right? The same goes over here. See, it's at the same kind of level. It has access to key, and I can pass key here to click me. This key.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. Now click me is gonna be called, and it's going to be called with the first parameter key. See? That's how we decided. We could have multiple ones. This time we have only one, and the first one is key. The value of it anyway gets passed, not anything else. Now if we go back to click me, this is the function that is just here. Click me is called with key. This one, this has the arguments over here, and it has none that is receiving. So this would be the first that is receiving, second, third. However, let's make a quick distinction for everybody who's older in our community or newer. What gets sent to click me is not key itself, it's the value of key. So key stops here. Key Y, K-E-Y stops here. The value of it gets passed. So key will be 0, 1, 2, then 0, 1, 2 gets passed here as the first argument. This would be either 0 or 1 or 2. So that's how it goes. Now, the fact that I can name this anything would be 0, 1, and 2, because that's the value that gets passed. I can also name a key, but if I choose to name a key, that doesn't mean that they're the same. It just happened for me to name them the same. The value is what matters. So whatever value key has here, click me will be called with that value. And if you name a key here or anything else, it doesn't matter. It's going to still be 0, 1, and 2. So keep that in mind. Okay, so now click me receives a number. Okay, so what if we somehow add this a number to this console log? A number, no, number, yeah. So now I have two arguments for console log, a number, comma, and that string something different. Let's see what happened now. If I want to click on change use me, I got 0 something different, 1 something different, and 2 something different. And every time I click on the middle one, it's going to give me 1 something different, never 2 or 0. So every single time I click on them, I'll see the same number on the same button. Yay! Let me know if you're in a similar place and if you have questions.
All good so far.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Let me check OBS. OBS, come back.
How long can OBS record? It's like after 2 hours.
No, you can record as long as you have disk. As far as I know, anyway. Just it's good for us to take breaks from time to time.
Yeah.
So we got this one working. This would be something you encounter a lot of times on the web, most of the times. I don't like it, and I have a different solution. Now, why I don't like it? There could be many reasons. I'm going to talk about the one that I hate the most, is that I have to create a new function just to call this one. No, that's okay. It's not a bad thing. However, this function also, and any other function, unless you pass it with task argument, is going to also receive a E as an event here. You can sometimes make use of E by passing it further down here if you need it. So now you got both the key and the event. Now, whenever I discovered this one, I was like, okay, so the first function already received an E, and I need to do this shit because I need this E to be passed down and I need access to this key, otherwise I don't know how to do it, right? So definitely you can play around with it. You can even change when here, it doesn't matter. So you can have E and key, and whatever. You're just making use of this from here and pass it whatever order you want, and this from here, right? That's what we do. Now, that's cool. Use this one, is the easiest one to understand. Now I'm gonna show you another way, and let me know if you understand this one, because I'm about HTML and CSS, right? Okay, so what I want to do is pass a property to this thing, any property, doesn't matter. This time I can see that this button doesn't really make use of name, and I can make use of it. It's something quite used in buttons, name, and inputs and so on. I don't need it for other purposes. I can make use of it now. So instead of doing what I've done before, I can just pass key to name. I can even do it as a string, as a custom string. And you'll see in a moment, you don't need this whole thing that I'm doing. Custom thing. And now if I am to go back to the browser and inspect my buttons, which I see 2 of them, because this is 1, this is 2. One of them, come on, let me inspect it. One of them would be this button, and one of them would be this one that has a name, custom thing key. So now something is good about it and something is not good about it. Okay, I'll switch this onto this side and talk a bit about those 2 buttons. Now, the good thing is that this button and this button now are a bit different in terms of one doesn't have a name and one has, and I can do something about it with styles, with logic. I can know which one is different. That's not my intent anyway. My intent is to have them somehow unique. And so far I have custom thing, and then, well, it's not the key. I was expecting the key. Yeah, when this happens, something is wrong here. Now, who can say what's wrong in this?
You need the dollar
Yeah,
to take the value from it.
So whenever you encounter that scenario and you don't see the value of the key and you see the word, it means it's not evaluating it in JavaScript. It just prints it out. It doesn't look at the value of it. Okay, and now I should see a button with custom thing 0, custom thing 1, and at some point custom thing 2. You don't need this part with custom thing. It's just that you could do it, and the important factor that we are always looking is some uniqueness, and this makes it unique. It's no longer custom thing every time. It's custom thing 0 one time, custom thing 1. This makes it unique, so we can make use of it. Now, this is not my intention. My intention is just to pass key. This is all I need. Now you know you can do it in multiple ways. Okay, so now I should see name 2, and of course name 1 and name 0, because those are the keys, right? Now, as I've said, this function gets called with E here. I don't make use of it. I can type ASD, and this will be the event, because now I can make use of it as I named it somehow. But it gets called with it. It's just don't make use of it, right? Because I didn't type anything. So now my other option would be to just pass down click me as I used to do before with click me. Now click me is no longer gonna receive a number as first argument. It's gonna receive an event as first argument. Could receive a number as the second one or not, but it's gonna receive an event. That's how it gets called, right? Automatically if you write it that way. Now, if I am to look at this event now instead of all this console log, so event, things might start to look even worse. Okay, let's go to the console and click on this one, and this is what I get. I get synthetic base event. It's It's an emulation of a click event. It's not the entire click event in the browser. It's a shorter version of it because it's more efficient on memory and so on. So we receive this synthetic base event. It's very, very similar to the original one. It's not as full as the original one. It doesn't have everything. However, what it does have is it has a target. And when you hover over this target, you don't have to click on it. You can see that the button itself gets selected, which indicates this button in the target. It's actually the element that you're looking in the browser. So far, so good?
Yeah.
Okay. And if we are to expand target, at some point, we'll see name 0. So, event is an object. It has a property target. Target is like an object, which has a property name. Let's look at console log once we click on a button, and the button calls click me with that event. And let's look at the value of event target name. We got 0, we got 1, and we got 2. Now those 0, 1, and 2, by the way, even we send them as numbers and they come back as strings. I don't really care about that aspect but right now, but in different scenarios you might really care about it, because if you wanna do something with a number and a string, either they're both string or both numbers, or you know exactly how they come together and in what order they come together, otherwise you'll get different results, not the ones that you're expecting. So now it's a string. It still holds 0, 1, and 2 as characters. It's enough for me. How do we go so far?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we know we have access to a value that is either 0, 1, or 2, because we only have 3 elements, right? This is let's do clicked ID. Let's do it like this, right? We don't have clicked ID. However, that's the place where the value that we're inquiring about used to be. So let's do const clicked ID. It's the same name as here, and I'm extracting that value outside. This is a type of refactoring. Once you care about this value and you might want to use it in the future, you can extract it into a constant and then make use of whatever you want, even in a console log or some other logic. Now, clicked
Just
ID.
inside the click me function, because it doesn't work outside, does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you do the console outside, clicked ID is not declared anywhere outside, like here. You don't have a const clicked ID here. If you do have it, these are no longer errors. But if you don't have it outside where it has access, no things can go inside the function.
And can I have a question as well?
Yeah, just a second. So this is the body of the function. You can always access things outside of the function, no matter where they are outside, but nothing can get inside the function unless you're passing it through an argument, and nothing can get outside of the function unless you're returning it out. So inside the function, this logic is protected from everything outside. Everything outside doesn't have access to it, yet this one has everything to access to everything that's on outside of it. Now, what would be your question?
Just about the event, why we using that?
This one?
The event, yeah.
Yeah. It's because whenever you attach a non-click event here, no matter what you do, this function is always going to be called with that event. Now, if you want to further pass down values to it, like more than the event, you can either use this syntax where you create a new function. Now, this one gets called with the event, and this one doesn't, which allows you to pass this key here. Although you could take the event here and pass it here as well, that's not the point. The point is you want to have access to this key and somehow pass it down further. The way you pass it down is because you're calling this function with this, then this one receives it here. because click me is one and the same with click me here. Now that's one of the ways to do it. In order to do this, you needed to create another function. This adds on memory. It's a way to do it. It doesn't add too much. Don't worry, you're not gonna break anything. It's just something that in the future, as you get more comfortable with to understand them, now you know the difference and you can reason about it, right?
Yeah.
Now another way to do it is to just pass the function like this one. Now click me is going to get called in the first argument with an event, because this is how it works here. You attached it on click, it's going to be called with the event of the click.
Yeah.
Now the event of the click holds information about this entire button because you just clicked on it. The event will say this is the button, you clicked on it, you clicked me on this X, this Y, at this time, whatever. So information about that click will be available and the element that has been clicked. Now, because I attached an attribute named name, it happens to be name. So an attribute with its characters NAME, whatever, not name. And then the value of it, because keys, we know already, we've looked at keys so many times, we know it's 0, 1, and 2. Now name is going to have the value 0 for the first button. Then for the second iteration, it's going to have 1, and last iteration 2. 0, 1, and 2, right? Now this one gets called with event. Event already knows about name because it's the button you clicked on it. The info about this key, a 0, 1, and button gets passed on with its name further down, and I can capture it here. Because the event has a target. The target happens to be the button that we clicked on. The button that we clicked on, we attached multiple properties probably. One of them is name. Therefore, I now have this clicked ID. Now, what Vivi was mentioning is that this function itself with clicked ID needs to be inside these curly braces in order for you to see it working. Because clicked ID is inside this function. So it happens to be on this line. It's inside it. You cannot call it from outside because this is outside the function. Cannot. It doesn't have access. But if it's in this area, inside the function before this one, then clicked ID exists. Well, it's here, right? And now you can see it.
Is that because of the function scope, no?
Come again, sorry?
Because of the function scope.
Yeah, function scope, yeah. That's the one. Cool. Now we are getting somewhere. We got a 0, 1, and 2. And what do you know about this array as having to do with 0, 1, and 2? What is 0, 1, and 2 for this array?
The index.
The indexes, right? So now we've played with arrays earlier, and we've learned about arrays that you can call them with indexes. And if you call it with index 1, this is gonna give us this. Just a second.
Yeah, the second.
Okay.
Hello.
I'm back. So we also have access to something that is 0, 1, and 2. So if we were to call video event list with whatever is 0, 1, or 2, we would get access to this, right? Let's see if we can get to that place. So we got clicked ID. Again, if I'm to click, I can see 0, 1, or 2. And now this is the one, right? Now, what if I'm to do console log? This time, I'm going to start with the array name, which is video event list. Video event list. And then I'm going to use square brackets to access one of its properties. And I'm going to pass an index of 0, 1, or 2. I know clicked is either 0, 1, or 2. So instead of the number of the index, I'm going to pass clicked. Because clicked ID is going to be 0, 1, or 2. Now let's see what happens. If if I am to go back and click on it, I should see JavaScript functions, part 1, part 2, and this one. And as well, if I come back and click on them, I should see them working. Yeah, I'm on live. Modern, are you good?
Can you just mute? I just want to talk to you personally.
Sure. Cool. So now, let's see. Are we back? Do you have something similar, or do you have questions about what we've done?
No, it's just so cool what you can do. First time it's difficult to understand, but I get the basics.
I will practice this a lot, so it's important to understand, not necessarily learn, because the way we learn
Because
is
I
through
heard
practice.
about this, but I never understood even the first time or second time. So
Now the idea is that we started to print a list. This list repeats this list repeats over here for as many elements as we have, and if we are to add more elements, like this part 2, 3, 4. Now what happens is that in the browser this is gonna be repeated for all the properties that we have. And by the way, I no longer need this use me over here. I no longer need it. Confuses me. So now I only have back home YouTube Live Logger with a list of things. Now every time I click on them, I should see exactly the ID that I clicked on, as well as the text that gets rendered. Well, almost. Something is a bit off here. Maybe we need to add a +1 or -1 when we do this, but we are almost there. Now we can know the difference between which elements we want to reason about. And because we've already looked into this part, which is the console log that says print me the one that I want to look at, we know for sure that every time we click, we can do something about it. And what could we do? I'm pretty curious. Firstly, I will get back to this list. I want to make sure that every time I click on it, you understand that we do have access to the entire list. Are we good so far?
Yeah.
Okay.
yes,
Now on this list, we could do multiple things. Because it's an array, we could usually start with a map, or a filter, or a reduce, or a for each, right? Now, if I am to start with a map or a filter, okay, it could be one or the other. It's not like one is the best scenario or not. However, what I know about map is that it takes 10 and it returns 10 elements. What I know about filter is that filter takes 10 and can return any number between 0 and 10. So what filter does is it applies a logic that either returns true or false for each element. So that logic gets somehow called, and that logic will return true or false based on how you make use of it at the end of it. Now, if that logic returns true and the array starts with 10 elements and the first element returns true, the first element out of 10 is going to be kept in the new array. If the second element goes through that logic and returns true, now out of 10 elements, 2 of them will be returned, the first and the second, because the logic returned true. If the third element somehow goes through that logic and says, well, it's false, then the third element is not going to be present in the final version. It's going to be missing. So the elements don't get transformed. They just get either kept or not kept in the next version, but the values of them don't change at all. It's just doing a filter, no change. The change is in how many elements are still present in the array, either all of them, none of them, or some. But there is no change to the elements for filter. All good so far?
Yes.
Now what
Yes.
map does, there is a scenario when map doesn't do a change. This is the scenario when map doesn't do a change. Visible change. It's still a change, but it's not a visible one. Map calls a function for each element of the array, and it transforms that element into something new. Could be the same or something totally different. It doesn't really matter. It's something new. Now, if I'm taking an element and returning the same element, basically I get a new array with the same values. If you look at the two arrays, they are different, but the values of them look the same because they are copies somehow. Now, if I add 2, and let's assume that all the elements are numbers, then there will be a new array with all the elements from the original array, and instead of their values, there'll be the sum of their value plus 2. So this is what map does. It transforms. But map always returns the same number of elements that go in. So 1, 213, and 2. If I do a map on it and I take the element which is 1, 213, and or 2, and I return element times element plus that number, it's too big anyway. Let's do 10 because it's easier to see. So I got now 11, 223, and 12. So map applies a transformation. Now, if I'm to replace map with filter, and now I still make use of x, everything will be back there. However, x we know it's 1, 213, and 2. If I put a condition like x has to be greater than 1, then 1 is going to be missing there because 1 is not greater than 1 when x is 1. Now the same goes for if it's greater than 2. Now both elements, when x is 1, 1 greater than 2 is going to be false. When x is 2, 2 greater than 2 is going to be false, therefore just the last one remains. The same goes for nothing remains if all of them fail. But you're still going to get out an array. You can see here that's an array, right? It's empty, but it's an array. So both of them, both map and filter return arrays. One of them applies a transformation from something smaller to something different, bigger, or for something bigger to something smaller. Maybe you have lots of objects and you're extracting just one value out of them. Maybe you start with a value and then you convert it into an object with multiple properties. You can get more complex, you can get less complex. That's what map is used for, transforming stuff. Yay! Now filter, it's used for, let's say, I'm trying to figure out a way not to say filter, it's used for filtering, because that's not a good explanation, right?
But it's still an
And
explanation.
sorting is not either, because sorting still keeps them there. So more or less for deciding which one stays, which one goes away. And I end it there, because otherwise I'll end up trying to explain this for half an hour and let's do coding. Cool. So now let's see. I might want to do something about this event. I might want to edit the element that I'm clicking on, or I might want to delete it. Okay. If I want to edit the element that I click on somehow, right? Does the number of, let's say, elements in the array changes or not?
It's not changing because we are editing all of them.
Okay.
No?
So
Or
we've
not
talked earlier
better.
about filter and map. Hey, Morty. Map. Which one do you think fits better for edit if we want to keep the same number of elements?
Map.
It's the map.
Okay,
Yeah.
so map. Now, if we delete one or multiple elements, would the length or the number of items be the same?
No.
So which one do you think between map and filter that makes sense?
Gonna be filters if you want to
Okay.
delete something.
Yeah.
Now how we make use of them we'll discover, but this is
But we
kind of the
can
logic
do
behind
with
it.
both, no?
Come again?
Basically, can do with map as well, the division or not?
In a weird way, possibly. I have to think about a weird way that actually solves it, but I'm not saying no to it.
Or maybe that's the third one, the reduce, that's where you can do everything. I don't know.
Now, let's see. Which one do you want to do first as an example? Edit or delete? Regarding our
Yeah,
collection.
let's do map first.
Well,
Then
edit or
let's
delete,
try.
not map.
Edit, sorry. Let's do
Okay.
edit first.
So if we do edit, we're expecting, for example, let's just take one of them. This one. I want to be different. Yeah. So our target is if we somehow manage to see this array with something different here, everybody's going to be happy, right? Well, that's good because to do that is quite easy. Look, this is 0, this is 1, this is 2, right? So therefore, if I want that one to be changed, what do I want to be changed? The value inside this video event list, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, video event list so far has been passed down to use me, and then making use of change use me, a function that changes the value of use me. We could somehow update that thing somehow. Not sure exactly how. Firstly, let's get the value ready, and once we get the value that we want, then we can see something different or not. So let's see. Let's apply a map because we want we know that for edit we want to experiment with map. Now I'm not gonna add those spaces all the time, but think about there is a function inside it which has different round parentheses than this one. So this function now gets called for all the elements. I'm gonna take this argument as something, and then inside this body I'm gonna do something else. I'm gonna do console log, and then in here test. That's it. Now I don't need console log in console log, although it does work, but the other one is purposeless, so I'm gonna remove the previous console log. So far on click I should see those lines, the clicked console log clicked ID, and then there'll be an iteration that happens with lots of console logs. That's what I should see every time I click. So if I go back to the browser and click on it. Okay, let me refresh. Okay, test 6 times, test 6 times, right? 2, test 6 times. So this iteration works. It does something 6 times. So far it doesn't actually apply any transformation because the transformation needs to happen on something in order to be applied. So far we just said, well, console log me test, right?
Yeah.
Now if I am to add something next to that one, so console log me test and something, now I no longer see the same thing. I can see 3, but then I can see all of them.
Values.
Because something gets called for every element, and because we have 6 or whatever of them, we see it 6 times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yay. Now something also in its iteration has access to key, and let's look at this key, and let's click on any element, and we can see now, because I clicked on the third button, it has index 2, and I can also see all the other ones and a key at the end of it. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now, what I can also see is that this and this are one and the same value. It's just that one is a string, one is a number. That's what I see. Every time I click on 2, I can see the one that I clicked on. I can see the entire list. And if I am to click on the last one, I can see index 5. I can also see index 5 at the end. So I have access to the one that I have clicked, and I also have access to all the entire list. Yay. Now, let's see what we could do. Basically, we could do a condition here. If something is true, then do this, and else do this when false. So this is something we could write in JavaScript on if else, and we can write a condition. This condition could be simple or as long as we can write it. In the end, whatever the length of the condition is when you write it, in the end it's going to evaluate to true or to false. Just like a variable, it's evaluated to its value, and then the value gets passed down. The same happens to a condition. It's evaluated to true or false, and then it looks at true or false and decides about those ones. So what you write in it as words doesn't really matter. It's the meaning behind them that matters, right? Cool. So this is what we could do. That's the if-else. There's another way to do if-else.
The short.
Yeah, a condition, then question mark, colon, and this happens when true, and this happens when false. And this is another way of writing this, with the exception that you might be missing some of those ones. And sometimes it's easy to write stuff inside curly braces. Sometimes it's not easy to write stuff in here. Whatever it is, it's syntax, you're going to figure it out. It's just, this one is quicker to write, but also easier, harder to understand or read. Now, I'm going to write both of them, not at the same time, but when it's something quick to write, I might use the shorter one. When it's something with more logic, I might use the longer one. This is how I write code. There are many beginners. I would prefer just the first one, but let's not go there at the moment. Cool. So my condition is return if the condition, then this, otherwise that. Yay. Now the condition would be if key is 0, 1, or 2. So if key is equal to clicked ID. It's not going to be equal, I know for sure, ever. However, let's start with this because this is what we want to write and discuss about what we need to make it actually work. Now, what happens when key is 0 and clicked ID is 0? Is it going to be true or false?
It will be true.
Okay, and if
We
it's
don't know.
true, is it SD or 213 that's going to happen?
SD.
Then the first
SD.
one is the
Now, another iteration comes about. Clicked ID is still 0. Key is 1. Is this going to be true?
no.
Okay. False.
So therefore, this is going to happen, whatever this is going to be here, because it's not going to be 213. So this is kind of the thing of it. You need to think of it as multiple times happening for each element, not just once when you write this. Now, what I want now to do is, based on if I clicked on it, I want it to have a different text. Different text. So I'm returning a different text. I don't need those spacings. I just type in those ones here. If that happens, I want a different text. Otherwise, I want the same thing. So as I was looping through the values of my list, something will be each value one by one. So instead of returning a different text, I want to return whatever it was whenever you looped through it, right? Now, by returning a value, which is either this or this, my list would change. And I need to capture this in something. So const new list is equal, and whatever this video event list map returns is going to be present in new list. Now I want to look here at the list, console log new list, and then a comma and a new list. And I'll switch back to the browser to confirm that whatever I'm doing should be what I'm doing. So I can see a lot of console logs. I can also see the new list that I just typed as a string to help me identify where I'm looking at. And then in this list, I can see something. Not sure if it worked. I don't think it worked then. Because I don't see a different text. Yeah, I don't see a different text.
Just one thing. So key is a number, but I don't know if clicked ID is a number. I think
Exactly.
it might be a string, so that's why it might be false all the time.
So now, as far as you remember, a key starts as a number wherever it's sent here. But because it gets sent over here, it gets converted to a string as 0. We looked inside the browser and we saw it, right?
Yeah.
Now, because name used to be a number with the value 0, now it's a string with 0, it also gets passed here in clicked ID as a string. Now we can definitely easily convert this into a number in multiple ways. However,
Yeah, with a plus.
with a
in front of
plus or with this and number.
Or we can do just
Int, par
two
float, many ways.
equals, just double equal, and it's gonna be the same.
Yeah, that we can also do that with double equal, and we no longer need that plus. And now double equal is going to compare just the values, not the types. So the values are the same 0. One is a number as a type and one is a string as a type. So it doesn't matter. However, this opens a larger can of worms because there is coercion happening here. And coercion has at least 7 types to think about, and all of them combined or sometimes output something different. And unless you know coercion, you should stay away from it. Now, coercion is a way for JavaScript to convert some variables into something different. We can talk more about it, or you can Google it, coercion. But basically, it converts those variables into something, and then it compares those values. So sometimes you're not. The output is a bit weird because it's not what's expected. Although if you know how it works, it's exactly the same time every single time. But if you know how it works. Now, if triple equal, it's easy. You don't have to worry about it. The values are the same. The types are the same. That's it. There are no longer multiple ways of this. That this condition could go out based on the values. It's always the same output. Now, again, you can use those ones, or you could not use them and use triple equals and either convert the key to a string or convert the string to a number. This is a string. This is how I convert it to a number. If we want to do the opposite and convert the key to a string, we can do string like that, or we could do key plus empty string. This will convert it to a string. Now I prefer this plus because it's shorter and it achieves the same purpose. Now if you click on it and look at this, I can see a different text. Now if I click on the last one, I can see a different text on the last one. Now if I click on the first one, I can see a different text. We'll go through this if needed to re-explain it. However, let's see what we've wrote so far. On a click event, we are grabbing somehow a value that can be either a string or a number, but the value of it's what matters to us. We can also look into the console for it. For the moment, I'll remove it because we know now what clicked ID is. We made use of this function at some point with no purpose other than making sure that, just a second. Whenever you call that function, the use state use me changes, and we could see that being reflected in the browser earlier on. So far, we explored how our data goes from one place to another, and we got to the point where you can see new list as being a new array with one of the values being changed. And the way we've done that is we took the initial array and we created a new array out of it using map. So now the value of this entire thing is a new array, and we capture that in new list. Now what the new array is basically we took every element of the original one and decided if we transform it into the same thing or leave it as is. Well, if we transform it into something different or leave it as is, that's what I meant. Now we know that those ones have keys, and we also know that at some point we click on something and we get that value into clicked ID through the name of that button that we click on it. And now we can take a decision. For each element, should I return the same value back or should I return something different? We could also return something that's almost the same, not totally different, like something to uppercase. And now, let's see, I'm gonna click on this one. You can see that one of them is uppercased. So I can do any type of transformation to something totally different, to something similar. I can even return that as a different collection, just this thing if I need to. So I can convert it to anything. So far, I just said, well, be all uppercase. Cool. Now we want to edit. In order to edit, we definitely need more than this. However, now we know how to get to a place that we can edit something, because we did edit it, but not in the way that we want, right? So for that part, we need to look into editing stuff and deleting stuff. So far, we learned more or less how to get to a point where you have a list, and based on some buttons that you click, you can access different elements in that list. Let's see. Questions?
No.
Okay. Let me check OBS. How much time is now passed? Is it 1 hour and 42 already again? Yeah.
Spice.
Okay. I'm gonna stop the streaming for a moment.